Welcome to another Appium video. In the last one, I showed you how to write tests for Android. In this one, I'm going to cover iOS simulators. Obviously, when you want to take your app to production, you're going to have to run those tests on a real device. But I'm going to cover that in a future video. Let's get started. I've installed Appium here, so I'll do an npm ls. So here I have Appium installed. And in the last video, if you remember, we used this driver called as UI Automator 2, and for running iOS tests you need a different driver which is called as XCUI tests. So the things that you need to install are one is Appium CLI itself, which is just npm install Appium. You can do this globally or keep it to your project directory, doesn't really matter. And because you need to have iOS simulators, you do need Xcode installed. So I have installed Xcode, and I do have a couple of simulators available to me. I think let me start up the simulator here and see what device I can use. So I think let me use the iPhone SE 3rd generation. So I have the app here. So I have the option to write a to-do. For example, let's say buy groceries, and then you click add to do, and then it adds it to your list of to-dos. So you can add one more, and it keeps a new one on top. So that's all it is that this app does. And if I restart the app, the data disappears. So this is a very simple app to learn how to write your tests. So the test we're going to write is exactly what I did. I clicked the input field, I went ahead and wrote some text, and then I clicked the add to do button, which then showed up the exact to do that I wrote in the list below. So if you take a look at the Appium docs here, you can see that you have the option of writing the tests in JavaScript, Python, Java, and Ruby. And obviously I wrote the Android test that I showed you in the last video using C#. So you still have the options of using any of these that you're familiar with or your team is familiar with. But the way you write those tests are pretty much the same. You have an Appium server running, and then these tests are going to define a couple of capabilities that the driver in that Appium server has. So this test, for example, is asking that the driver that it needs is UI Automator 2, and this is for Android. For us, this is going to be XCUI test, and a couple more capabilities, which is platform being Android or iOS, and what package you want to test. And then after that, it's all about writing those tests themselves. So the way you write those tests are pretty much the same. It's just that there is an option of using the language that you're most familiar with. So this is the project that I was talking about. So essentially it's a C# unit test. So if I show you the CS projects, it's using XUnit, which is the test runner. And a couple of packages that I use to help tests is Fluent Assertions and the coverlet collector, but these are not actually needed for running Appium. So the only package that you need is going to be appium.webdriver, and that's what connects to the Appium server itself. There is this other package that is quite handy, to be honest. It's a package to help you compare images, and this is the package I'll use to show you how to do image diffing and give you that perfect pixel perfect UI. So henceforth, everything that I'm showing you is the C# project itself, but do remember that the docs in Appium website are covering tests to be written in any language that you prefer. So the way I generated this project is using the .NET new XUnit template, and then you can pass in the name and where you want your project to get created. That's what this generated. I always add a sanity test just to make sure the world is working right. And next there's this test for the to-do app itself. So this is the same capabilities that we're defining our Appium server to have. So we want the platform to be iOS. We want the automation name or the driver to be XCUI test. I'll show you how I install that driver, by the way. and the app ID is this app ID, but it's actually the to-do app. Then you have to define the name of the device that you're running this on. So the device actually is the name of this simulator that we have. And then the platform version, if you remember, I used iOS 17.5. Then there's this the creation of the driver itself, passing in those capabilities and the URI to where the Appium server is running. Once this is done, you can start your app using activate app function. And obviously there's a dispose function to sort of clean off and quit the driver once we've done running all these tests. Now I'll show you how to install those Appium drivers, right? So I showed you the list of Appium drivers that I've installed, which is these two, one for Android, one for iOS. And the CLI itself is kind of self-explanatory, but what you use is Appium driver install. So you do Appium driver install, and then you pass in the name, which is XUI test. Obviously you have the option to, I think, pass the exact version as well, and it says it's already installed for me. And obviously I have the option to update as well. Now I'll show you how to write those exact tests, right? The one that I showed you, which is adding a to-do. It's a good idea to first do this manually, which is what we did. We went ahead and wrote a to-do here. So I did test and then add to-do, and it added it. And those exact human behaviors is what we wanted to replicate. So to get to this element in a manual test, it's pretty easy. We know where it is and we click it. In Appium, the default behavior is to first find the element using something called as XPath. XPath is basically a type of selector that you write. For example, this says that this XPath is of type XUI element type text field, and then it should have a value of type to do to complete. So how did I even get to write all of this XPath? I don't know how to write all of this. So help you figure out those XPath strings. You can use the Appium inspector app. I've installed this using Brew, but I think you can also download the app directly from Appium. And what it does is it gives you this UI, Appium server. So it is started on localhost 4723. That's what this has. And then you can add your capabilities. So this capability is going to be the same that you had defined here, right? So you want your platform name, which is platform name, to be iOS. Then you have Appium automation name, which is XUI test. App ID is this. And the way I figured out the name that maps to, so this string is what maps to the name. So you can get the value by command clicking that field. So app ID is done. Then there's the device name. And finally the platform version. So now, because the Appium server is running exactly on this port and this host, so I think I should be able to start the session. And what it's going to do behind the scenes, if you look at this, is it's going to try to find that exact device with these matches. Obviously you see it didn't match, because if you observe this iPhone device, it is iPhone SE, so it's not matching iPhone simulator. So device name that we passed was iPhone simulator, but our device is actually called something else. It's iPhone SE 3rd generation 17.5. So to figure out what exactly is your device name, you can use the xcrun command. So to figure out what device name to use, because I have the device already running, so it's booted, so I can do an xcrun simulators control, list those devices which are currently booted. So this is the one. So this is the device name that I instead need to pass. So I'll pass it here. I've added it here already. And now if I start a session, it should connect to this device and then start my app. So as you can see, it's connected and a lot of things going on in the logs, but you have now this option. So let me expand it a little bit and keep the app on the side. So you can see you get the same UI that you have on the app itself, and then the tree of all the elements that you have. The way I figured out, I want to go to type to do here. Type to do to complete is by finding out this element, and then once you select it, you have the option of copying the XPath here. So this is what I copied, and now if I go back into my app, you can see the first tests. The first test has that XPath. So that's how we figure out those XPath to select elements and then write your tests. There's obviously other ways to write your tests so that they don't break that easily. What could happen is your engineers could change the type of this element, so it might not be an element of XCY element type text field. It could be something else. So there is also the option of using something called as test IDs, and I think that is documented on the Appium website. I'll add all these links in the description so it's easy to find. And but XPath is something that's pretty common on the web as well as on native UI, so you can rely on it. So once you have those elements, if you look at the test, what it's doing is it's first trying to find the element, which is that input field. You do a click on that element, then you send these keys, which is whatever text you want to write in your to do, then figure out where the add button is. So it's same as before. So you have also the option to select elements using this, and it doesn't always work, right? So I tend to go here in the source and figure it out here. So if you see, this is not exactly mapping here because I think it's rendering the phone device slightly smaller like this. So now it works fine. I think that's like a little bug. But yeah, so what you do is figure out where that add button is, which is this one. Get its XPath. So now you have the add button. Then we do a click, which is click the add to do. That what it should do is now show you the to do in the bottom, right? This is where I can add some text which will go to this field. I can do test to do and then send those keys. So if you see, it added those test to do a string. I think I'd also created a to do using the simulator directly, so it showed up here. And now if I go to this one, which I think is here, so I do a tap. So now it added the to do. Now what we can do is figure out where that to do is. So this one. So you can see this has the XPath of this value. So we can do is find the element which has this XPath, and I think I'm going to have to escape those double quotes. So now did a find element. Let's do a negative test first. It's always a good practice to write negative test first. So we'll do a to do test 1, and I'm going to also try to skip this test, which I'm going to show you later. So what I did is figure out where the input is, send those keys to create a to do, click the add to do button. Now I'm trying to find whether this to do got created below, but I'm sending the wrong text, which is fine. And I'm also going to comment all this other stuff. Now let's just assert that this to do is not null, right? But because we've written a wrong text, it should actually fail. So let's do a .NET test. So now if you see, the test failed, which is it couldn't find an element with the given XPath, which is correct. That's what we wanted anyway. So what we can do is, let me just move the name of the to do text here. Let's make it actually like this, pass the same thing here, and then now we'll pass the to do text here, right? So now this shouldn't be null. So now this is the positive test. Let's run the test again. So now it passed. So if I show you side by side, the test is actually getting run on the same app. So I'll do .NET test again, and you'll see a new to-do get created. So you can see the exact actions being performed as well. What I always like to do is to add a screenshot of what it is that happened. So this is the code for that, which is I've hard coded the path for now, but you can use a base path and add the name of the scenario that you're testing, which is also a good practice to match your test name. And then you can use the driver that you had before, which is basically your Appium driver, and get a screenshot and then save the photo as a file. So now if you see here in my screenshots, I'm adding this scenario based screenshots, and that has the screenshot. So I've deleted the older screenshots, and let me do a rerun to get the fresh screenshot. Give that a second here. So now that passed, you can see the add to do PNG got created again, and now I can see exactly what your screen looks like once your test is done. So that's the basic test to how to add a to do and make sure that the to do gets added. Now let's focus on this one, which is actually, I'm going to comment this now. So this is a different kind of test, which is to match exactly how your Figma design looks. So let's assume I have, so for now I've used an empty screen here, but what I can do is so I've kept an empty screen here, and I want to use this as my base template. Ideally what you would use is your exact Figma design, put that here, and then do our image diff. So what it's actually doing is first figuring out where the actual path of the test is and where the expected path of the test is. It's a good way to check whether your designs are matching with your actual implementation, but obviously it's going to be really brittle if you want to test different screen sizes. For now this is very basic, and I'm only testing one screen size, which is this iPhone SE 3rd generation. So first what I do is find the actual path, which is the one that got generated from this one, and then you have your expected path, which is your design. For the design I have an empty image, so the diff is anyway going to fail. And then there's the diff path, which shows you the difference between two images. So now what we do is the test starts by taking a screenshot, saves it as a file, and then does an image diff using the package that I showed you before, which is this one, the image sharp compare. And there will be similar packages in other languages to do this. I just found this to be very easy to use in C#, so that's what I used. So now if I run the test again, and I think I have a diff already. So here if you see, everything is in black. That means, see, this the source image is the actual path, which is the one that created from our test, and then the expected path, which is the white screen, this one. So it's subtracting the white screen from this, and then that's why you're getting a negative diff here. This library also provides a masked diff compare result, and you can use that to make sure that your absolute errors between those two are 0. Obviously you can have a threshold if you want some parts of the image to be different, which is fine. But that's how you do image based diffing in your tests. As you might have already observed, this writing these tests for the iOS app has nothing to do with the way the app is actually written. The app that I have written could have been written in React Native, in .NET MAUI, in Swift, in a native script. It could have been anything. But that's the beauty of Appium, that it allows you to write tests for a variety of type of applications, given that you have the right driver installed. Just to talk a little bit about the way I've written this app, it's written in something called as native script, and I'm using Svelte. I use Svelte to write most of my applications. My portfolio is written in Svelte, and a couple of other projects I'm working on. And it's a little easier for me to use the same language, or rather the same compiler, Svelte, to write native apps, web apps. And that's how I wrote it. But again, that's the beauty of Appium. It could have been done in any way, and it has nothing to do with how you write those tests. That's all I wanted to cover in this video. If you have anything specific that you want to be covered in Appium, please do add those in the comments. There were a couple of comments related to writing tests for Windows. It's been a while since I've written any Windows app. I think I had created one when UWP was originally released. But since then, web has gotten a lot of traction, and even Windows now supports writing apps using JavaScript, using, I think, Electron. That's how I would write those apps now. But given the fact that Appium can be used to write those tests, I don't really see a reason for me to cover Windows specifically. It's just the setup that's going to be different. So I think you'll be able to figure it out on yourself, by yourself. But if you still have any questions related to Windows and using Appium there, do add those comments in this video, and then I'll try to create a different video for it. That's all I had. See you in the next one.